Let's loosen it up. Let's have some fun. We are going to have some contestants come out here, and they're going to engage with Robert and Dave as they give their very valuable data. We have a panel of 6 operator representatives that are going to be participating in the shenanigans that these two get up to. So we're going to see how this goes. And if you want to interact with us, please do. Feel free to shoot up your hand if you have a question or put it in the app. I don't know. Maybe that's a thing still. So let's get to it. You guys ready for this?
Let's do it.
Here's what I'm going to do. We didn't tell Robert what we're doing. This is a fun surprise for him. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is as we bring out our contestants, each of the contestants has given us 2 truths and a lie about themselves. And I'm going to make Dave and Robert pick the lie as our contestants come out. And we're going to see who wins. And there's going to be a special prize for the winner, which is that we make you take a shot on stage. I'm just kidding. We'll find some other prize that maybe you'll actually like. Okay, so without further ado, let's bring out our first contestant. We're going to bring out Matt Banton, the Vice President of Menu Strategy and Innovation at Cracker Barrel. Give him a round of applause. Welcome. Take your seat. All right, so Matt. All right, Robert and Dave, you guys listening closely?
Yeah, bring it.
Matt's 2 truths and a lie. Both of his 2 children are named after superheroes. He's gotten every generation of iPhone on day 1 of the release. Or he drove from Miami to Los Angeles in an RV once.
I'll go first if you want to.
You go ahead.
All right, I'll go first. I'm going to say that you did not, in fact, purchase every single generation iPhone on the first day of its release. That, I think, is the lie.
Okay, Dave.
All right. Well, then I'm going to say you did not drive in an RV across the country.
Matt, what's the answer?
The lie is I did not drive across the country.
Oh, 1 point to Dave. Okay, now I'm dying to know, what are your children's names, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, sure. My son is Clark.
Okay.
And my daughter is Parker.
Oh, that's great.
Right.
I like that. I like that. All right, Matt, thank you for being a good sport and joining us. Next up, we have Heath Nielsen, the president of HTO. Heath, welcome to the stage. Okay. Robert, are you ready to redeem yourself?
I'm going to try.
Okay. Heath's 2 truths and a lie. He's climbed 22 14,000-foot peaks. Don't give us any clues, Heath. Don't give us any clues. He's been transferred to 16 cities. And he did a business deal with Martha Stewart, who's near and dear to us.
Hey, I went first last
All right,
time.
well, then I'm going to say you did not climb 2 peaks.
22. 22.
I'm sorry, 22.
22 14,000, which makes it even more possible lie.
Clearly, that's what it is.
16 cities is a lot. I'm saying that's a lie.
What do we got?
Martha Stewart.
Martha
I
Stewart.
did not do a business deal with Martha Stewart, but I did get yelled at, probably worse by any human, by Martha Stewart, trying to propose a business deal.
Okay.
Okay, what was your favorite city of the 16?
Lake Tahoe.
Tahoe, okay. And what was the highest of the peaks?
Holy Cross. Well, actually, Mount Rainier, Washington.
Rainier.
Yep.
Okay, wow, this puts us to shame in your accomplishments. Jeez. Okay, thank you, Heath, for being a good sport. Our next contestant is Amy Hom, the COO of Barcelona Wine Bar. Amy, come on out here. Welcome, welcome. Okay.
Boring compared.
Who got the last one right? I'm not doing a good job. You both got it wrong. Okay, so Dave is still up 1-0. Robert, you're losing time here, bud. We gotta do this. Okay. Here's the 2 truths and a lie. In her downtime, she runs a nonprofit for emerging leaders called LEAD. She is an avid gamer of Call of Duty and almost went professional. And she's a huge fan of the St. Louis Cardinals, which must be like who's a fan
I get to go
of Cardinals?
first.
You get to go first this time.
All right.
I'll pay you $100 and give you the answer.
I am going to say the fandom is not. I don't know. The gamer thing, I think that's too cool. That I got to go with the fan of the Cardinals, right?
Okay, Dave.
I was going to pick the same thing. Can we both pick the same thing? Is that?
You can pick the same thing if you like.
I'm going to.
But just remember, if he's wrong, you're also wrong. So you have no
I'm
chance.
+1 right now, though. Sam,
That's
so
right. You've got the advantage.
Yeah, I could just keep picking his.
You know what? Whoever wins, the loser has to come off stage and can't do this session. Okay, so you're gonna go the same thing.
That was what I
Okay,
was thinking, yeah.
Amy, what is it?
I am not a gamer.
Not a gamer.
Not a
That was
gamer. I'm a
too
big St.
specific.
Louis
She threw
Cardinal
you off the
fan.
scent. Okay, my condolences. All right, so it's still 1-0. Amy, thank you for joining us. Let's get on to our next contestant, John Dekos, the president and CEO of Killer Burger. John, come on out here. Welcome, John. Welcome.
Sam?
Okay, here we go. Ready? Robert, you've got 3 more chances, man. Let's see how you can do this. Okay. Took his wife, 4-year-old and 7-year-old on a 30-mile backpacking trip this summer. I can't imagine ever doing that with my children, but as a second-generation Greek, very proud of the fact that the hamburger's origin can be traced back to the Minoan civilization of Crete. I'm dying to know if that's true, because I don't know if that's true. And finally, Killer Burger opening first store outside the Pacific Northwest in San Antonio.
San Antonio, you get to go first.
What's the lie?
You have to poke
I'm going to take number 3 about the Killer Burger opening outside San Antonio.
Okay. It's actually going to be Austin, you think, or something like that?
Well, that was my guess, too.
Yeah, you actually need to shake it up because
Yeah, I will. Okay.
take a chance here.
Yeah, that 30 miles, did you say 30 miles? That's
30-mile backpacking trip.
with children of that age? 30 feet, maybe. I think that's the lie.
What's the lie?
Hamburger didn't start in Greece.
Okay, I was going to say, I was really thrown by
It's
that.
shrouded in mystery, but it wasn't Greece.
Okay, so that's whiff again for the two of you. I might be running this session after this. Holy smokes. All right, John, thank you for joining us today. Our next contestant is Julie Wade, the head of marketing for Tzatziki's Mediterranean Cafe. Welcome, Julie. Julie, do you need 2 arms to help? Got it?
I'm good.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, ready, guys. Here we go. All of her grandparents lived to be at least 93 years old. She's on a quest to visit every NFL stadium, and she's lived in the same area code her entire life.
Oh, I think that area code is the lie.
Area code, okay.
think that-
Dave,
You've been more than one area code.
you feel really confident about
Yeah,
that
he
one.
does. He does feel really
Did I
Better
stutter?
feel.
Well, then I'm going to say the NFL piece. I think
NFL.
maybe it's more of a baseball thing instead of an NFL. I'm just guessing.
Oh, okay.
Just guessing.
You're assuming she put a lot of strategy into this, but okay, Julie, what is it?
All right, one is correct and one is not correct. So it is the MLB is my quest.
MLB. Oh,
Not
you
NFL.
got it very
So you-
specifically.
Lie then, right? That's,
So that
That's
was,
the lie.
The lie was
So
yes.
Dave
I'm
is
on the
2-0. Robert, you
MLB
have no
stadium
chance
quest.
of winning this
Zero
at this
chance.
point.
You're
So if
really
you would
playing
like to
house.
just exit stage
Whatever.
left, by all means. Okay, I'm just kidding. We like Robert. He's okay. All right, Julie, thank you for joining us. Our last contestant, certainly not least, is Scott Taylor, the CEO of Cherry Bounce Hospitality. Welcome, Scott Taylor. What's up? We put a hat there.
Yeah.
I was supposed to wear this out here. Can you believe it took me till the last day to wear a cowboy hat? I just okay. This is really itchy. Okay, Scott, welcome. By the way, if you need hooch, this is your guy. He's been passing around like candy all the last couple of days. Okay, Robert, I don't even know if you need to try, but you can, if you would like to have some fun, you can. He attended and finished law school. He was a high school wrestling state champion, or he won a belly flop contest at an MTV spring break event during college. One of these things I actually do know is very true.
Those are all too good.
I feel like the law school piece is a little too specific that he started and finished. So I'm going to say that. I think he started. I think the finished part is the lie.
Okay. You just take one look at Scott and you figure, this guy's not finished in law school.
That's me, man.
Robert, do you want to just put in an effort?
See, but it seems as though, and we had a little bit of a conversation prior to our session here today, and that one does seem a little bit off-brand, so to speak.
Okay.
So I think that I'm going to stick with Dave on this
You
one.
wisened
It
up
doesn't
and
matter
decided
whether
to
or
follow
not
Dave's lead.
You know what I
That's
mean?
right. Okay, Scott, tell us what's the lie.
Yeah, I started and didn't finish law school.
Started and did not finish.
I crushed the belly flop contest. Crushed it.
Well, tell us about this belly flop contest, Scott.
So, Fort Lauderdale, a long time ago, I'm behind this large sunburned kid from the University of Wisconsin who knocked most of the water out of the pool. So I was like 135-pound kid representing the University of Florida, but I hit the water perfect, and it was like a little red line. Plus, I chugged a beer right before I jumped in.
Is there proper form for belly flopping? Can you give us tips?
Chug a beer, take the edge off, land flat. And I had like this big bar tab. It was awesome. Super popular guy for like 30 minutes after that.
I bet you were. I bet you were. Well, congratulations on that accomplishment in your life.
It's super, super close to my heart.
All right, I'm going to hand things over to Robert and Dave, and I am your bartender for this session, everybody. If you need a second round, holler for me. I'm in the back, and I'll hook you up. We've got some extra drinks here in the bar, and that goes to all of you. If you would like a beverage, they are out in the foyer. Robert and Dave, take it away.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. Very excited to have you, and I know everybody here is more excited to hear from you than they are from Dave and myself, right? So what we are going to do is we're going to take a walk through some data content based on a lot of our Technomic resources, kind of give you a little bit about our take, but really turn things over to you to help answer the question. But of course, along with that, got to have some fun and games. So, again, I'm going to leave it up to Sam to determine what the prizes are, but we are going to ask you to participate. You'll see they have some yes/no paddles. They're not green and red, although blue and red, technically, I guess that counts. Oh, green and red could be for people who are colorblind, right? I guess maybe that would be the difficulty. Anyway, we're going to talk through a number of trends that we've new trends, other things that are relevant. Limited time offers, obviously an increasingly big deal. Where some of this innovation and inspiration is coming from, as far as what we see on menus is concerned. Health and wellness, sort of an ongoing question mark in terms of what restaurants' role in consumers' health and wellness looks like. Value, you can never get away from that conversation. Even when times are good, value is important. And finally, Dave's going to wrap up with some really fascinating takes on some of the attributes that winning concepts have shown over the years, and distill that down a little bit. But go through some of the metrics that we track at Technomic to try to determine whether or not a limited time offer is going to be a winner. And we look at draw, we look at craveability, we look at things that are going to drive some incremental traffic as these metrics. But the first thing we want to show you is how that compares to core menu item additions when we look at restaurant menus. Now, Dave may have shared some of this, may or may not have shared some of this during his State of the Industry presentation at the beginning of the conference, but it's highly relevant here and sets up our discussion. So the count of menu items here represents that total number of items across the top 500 restaurant chains in the U.S. And that top 500 is dictated by U.S. system-wide sales. For the majority or the lion's share of those that menu item count. And what you'll see here is that we really have started to recover from that pandemic dip, those lows, as many trimmed their menu, sometimes due to supply chain coercion, other. But what you can see here is that although we're climbing back, we're still about 4% off of what we had in 2019, just in terms of total number of menu items. So very important to note. So what's happening here? As a result, a lot of folks, and there are a number of reasons for this, but a lot of folks have shifted that innovation pipeline over to limited time offers. Menu R&D is again, much to the chagrin of many in the supplier community, maybe more effective in this way in terms of making a splash. Again, keep in mind this is the top 500 restaurant chains in the U.S., and not all of these are going to be brand new items. Some of them are going to be seasonal favorites. We can think of the PSL at Starbucks or some other seasonal items that we get back year over year. And some are just carrying new combinations of items or perhaps some promotional pricing. But that raw count of limited time offers, those rollouts, it's exploded. Operators continue to bank on LTOs to boost that traffic, to generate the interest, particularly in today's challenging environment. Very important there. So now we come to our first question for our contestants to answer. This is not a yes, no, or true, false question, but it's multiple choice. So we're going to sort of do show of hands here. The question is, what is the percent of consumers that say the availability of limited time offers is important or very important? In other words, it's driving their decision in which restaurant to visit or which restaurant to place an order at. So we have A, 25%. Who thinks it's 25% of consumers? Nobody thinks it's 25% of consumers. 37% of consumers, just over a third. 37% of consumers say it's important. Okay, we got 2 takers on B. How about C? 52%. Who believes it's 52%? Rest of the lot here, and we have 76% at the bottom. And in fact, it is 52%. So we have a couple of winners. Actually, we've got 4 winners, right? No? 3? 4? Awesome. Fabulous. So more than half of consumers today say that the availability of limited time offers on that menu, it's important when they're deciding where they're going to place their order or visit for an occasion. Now, this skews much higher for that important younger generation. 55% of Gen Zers and 62% of millennials recognize this as important in their decision making. And it's increased over time. That's up from 48% a couple of years ago. So we're now at that point where a majority of consumers feel that this is important, and it plays a role in the decision of where they're going to dine. So you have to take that into account. And what products are operators looking to or leveraging most in this LTO space and new item innovation? These are the top 10 items just based on that raw count that we see. And this was launched within calendar 2023. Can't wait to see what it looks like in 24 and if we've seen any changes, right? They speak to a lot of the macro elements impacting operators and consumers. Operationally, a lot of these categories may represent some high margin items, beverages in particular, huge focus. They also sort of ease the process and can be quite an awesome differentiator. I know that Scott has a lot to say about that in particular when we talk about the way that you're using beverages, at least as far as what you've shared with us, is concerned to differentiate and to promote the brand, and for good causes. Love that part about it too. So desserts, ice creams, cakes, cookies, these are a great way to add that incremental spend, right? Get the check booster going. Sandwiches, pizzas, burgers. These are classic comfort foods. They're always in style. Consumers are always looking for good options in those areas. And you think about what you can do with that, with toppings, with bases, with sauces, and other things. So, you know, consumers are also thinking about value meals because that bundling we know is going to be important to today's cost-conscious consumer as they're looking to maximize their food service dollars. And at this point, Dave, I believe that things get turned over to you.
So, and we're going to ask the panel in a second about LTOs and what they're doing, but I did want to cover off on 2 things that we track, and as we look at our menu data, we look at a couple different metrics that I think is important to highlight in terms of purchase intent and look at you know, what the appeal is for that. So we release a monthly online survey of recently released limited time offers. And so as we look by what those are and what those top 10 LTOs are, and again, this is data, as Robert said, that we tracked in calendar 2023. We have that top 10 list here from that period, and so we're going to delve into a couple of the trends that we see and then ask our panel to talk about this. And so if you look at those top 10 LTOs, there's a couple big trends, right? First, we see a few fruit-forward desserts on this list. We have apple fritters, we have an apple crumb pie, and we have strawberry shortcake. These are all pretty classic dessert options, which makes sense as these are more well-known and loved options that are often what rises to the top from a consumer perspective for purchase intent. So perhaps not super surprising in terms of the what consumers are telling us they like. But then we have indulgent sides, and we have this showing up in the list. Lots of fried options, as you maybe would imagine, with the onion rings and the halvesies side, which is half onion rings, half French fries. They're from Burger King. And then, of course, potatoes with the fries in that have the halvesies and the baked potato, right? So these are, once again, these more classic options that we usually see in purchase intent. And both of these fried options and potato offerings and those fruity desserts as well represent a greater menu trend that we've been seeing over the past few years of comfort foods really ramping up and being more on menus. And that comfort food is really just, you know, more standard common options that are a bit more familiar and that appeal to a wide range of people. And then finally, I guess, you know, going from there now, we talk about not only purchase intent, but then we talk about draw. And I talked on Wednesday about traffic and how traffic is primarily the concern right now, right? And so our research also is intended to look at draw and then identify those items with the most potential, which will bring in incremental traffic, right? And measuring how likely potential purchases are to increase their visits to an operator with those items. So the top 10 LTOs by draw, the last ones were purchase intent, right? If we look at these, and again, these are drawing in consumers, and these all vary between 77 and 81% of consumers that said that these would draw them in. Right, so a couple trends here that we're seeing. The first trend we're calling out are these seafood dishes throughout the list. And we're seeing this across day parts with some breakfast choices as well as some lunch or dinner options here. These are once again some of those indulgent choices that I sort of referred to earlier, especially seafood in the breakfast day part, or that fried rice that combines crab with pork belly. Sounds really good. And so seafood certainly is one of those options. As we look at some of the other sort of interesting things, is decadent breakfasts, right? So some of these seafood options we just saw, plus maybe steak and eggs, coconut cream pancakes. This is bringing a lot of indulgence into that morning day part with both savory and sweet options. And so those are a couple of interesting things as we look at those LTOs and what's happening. And then finally, global inspirations, right? And we look at some of the things like Greek salmon salad, elote corn shaker, cheesy jalapeno Mexican pizza, right, kind of a global inspirations, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of these global inspirations as we get into it. But I want to get to our panel here because I think, you know, we can talk a lot about LTOs and what we're seeing happen on the menu, but I think it's always great to hear from the operators and what they're actually seeing. And so maybe Scott down there, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk about LTOs, maybe some of your most successful limited time offers, how it happened, how it came about, what drove the process? And maybe comment on some of what you've seen here as well.
Yeah, so I think LTOs are super important. Sorry, I got the wrong answer. I think they cheated. But no, sometimes there's a balance of trying to bring in new items versus maybe taking some things you already have and creating. You know, for me and the brands on our platform, we just have really fun brands, booze forward. So we try to be playful with things that we do. One really successful thing, we sell a lot of crawfish, and so we came up with a dish called Menage a Craw.
Okay.
Kind of funny,
so
but it's
jumping on the sea. I mean, you're obviously a seafood
yeah,
concept, but
three-way crawfish, right? Funny T-shirt, but it's a great dish. You know, boiled crawfish, fried crawfish, and crawfish étouffée. But it was things that people liked, but it was funny and it was cute. But it was smaller portions of things they liked. And, you know, bundle it with other things where, you know, if you're going to spend $20, if I can get 5 things on the table instead of 1. Small bite, small dessert. So
yeah, and Amy, you were kind of laughing at that. What is your sense, or talk a little bit about what you guys do with LTOs at Barcelona?
Well, we're not in the norm. We do special things. Everybody does special things, but ours is a little bit of an anomaly. Our menu is an LTO every day. We have different chefs in every restaurant. They have the autonomy to drive and create their own menu and change it daily, and it also helps with commodity pricing and the whole shebang, so it works for us. We have to hire really great, talented chefs to do that, but they change it out constantly. So, and we also price it to margin and make sure it makes sense. We may have to steal that idea of the crawfish menage a trois, though, because, I mean, who doesn't want to try that? I'm sorry, said that wrong. It's the alcohol.
It's already kicking in. It's already kicking in.
Well, they made us do shift shots in the back, so, you know.
it's a trademark, though.
I'm sorry, we weren't supposed to talk about the HR's not in the room. We're good.
That's great. Matt, how about Cracker Barrel? What's your view on LTOs? Can you talk about your LTO process, maybe what's been successful?
For sure, awesome. So when we think about LTOs, I think it's important, you mentioned both draw and purchase intent.
Yeah.
I think the one that's really important is to find the ones that intersect the most, right? Because I think along that metrics of draw and purchase intent, there's some things that are going to be really exciting, some things that may be niche to some guests, right? So it's up to you and your brand strategy to determine kind of which ones kind of work the best. But also, I think it's really important that the LTOs build off your core, right? So I think when they build off your core, a couple things happen. One, it's familiar to your brand and to your guests. And 2, it allows you to talk about your brand and product in a new way. I think a really important one for us recently was our hash brown casserole shepherd's pie, right? So hash brown casserole has been around with the brand for a very long time, but where we really play well is intersection of like familiar favorites and putting a twist on them as well. And we're able to do that with our hash brown casserole shepherd's pie, which we launched this past fall. It's been one of our strongest LTOs that we've had, and it also helped us reignite dinner as well. So I think it's not just draw and purchase intent, it's how the two things work together with the strategy that your brand's trying to lay in place.
How did that affect, you say it kind of reinvigorated dinner to a degree. How did that play out, knowing that hash brown casserole is not necessarily first in top of mind for consumers, speaking to that day part?
Yeah, so just going back, I think it ladders to our overall, one of our key pillars is enhancing the menu and with craveable items, right? So the idea is like, hey, dinner's a day part that we want to grow. How do you bring something that's ownable and craveable to that day part that someone will break a routine to come visit, right? So if you imagine a ton of guests already know us for breakfast, they know hash brown casserole, so let me now go try the brand in this new way for the hash brown casserole shepherd's pie. It's a mouthful. It's a mouthful for everyone to kind of say.
Heath, you were kind of nodding, or it sounded like you wanted to build on that.
Definitely elaborate on I think having LTOs being multifaceted, a lot of times it's just straight traffic or frequency that you're going for. We did most successful one I've done most recently was back in May. We launched a great strawberry passion tea, but we did 2 weeks. We're a franchise organization. We've got 125 units, and we're all franchised. So we did 2 weeks of launch where we went back out into the community, specifically with teachers and nurses. And so we would go to the hospitals, we'd go to the schools, and we would serve them free tea, strawberry passion. And so we did a big community give back, which allowed us to garner a bunch of PR and a bunch of press, which then fed our franchise development side. Then we did the 2 weeks in-store, in-cafe of the LTO. So by far the biggest one that we did, because we basically got a month's worth of coverage out of the LTO with only doing 2 weeks of promotions.
Oh, okay, great. Julie, how about you? What's your perspective and any successful LTOs you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, we really use our LTO slots as a launching pad for items to go onto the menu as a regular item. Kind of test those out, see what the customer's opinions, perspective is. If it's really a winner, then it will roll onto the menu eventually. One of the most successful ones was a couple of summers ago, we launched our lamb burger. And that was a real departure for us because most of our LTOs had been geared toward women. That's our core customer base. Yeah. We're about 55% women in our customers. And this was the first time we had really had an item that was geared toward men and a really heartier item as an LTO. And it was a super successful LTO. We ran it during the summer months and then brought it back the next summer. Kept it on the menu after that, and then started doing different iterations of the lamb burger. We did a Southern-style lamb burger the next year and added pimento cheese to it. And then this past summer, we did another version and did a whipped feta lamb burger. So we're kind of playing off of the same theme, but doing variations of it all along and kind of keeping it fresh and keeping it new, but highlighting that same item over and over again.
And so is that now permanently on the menu, but just different iterations? Is that, so do you have one right now on the menu?
We have what we call our Mediterranean lamb burger, which is the everyday normal version of it. And then during the summer months, the LTO period, then we highlight a different version of it. And the Mediterranean is still available at that time. But then we also have kind of the special LTO version as well.
And then John, finally, from just a burger perspective, what's your, I guess, LTO story?
Yeah, sure. So, and I got a question on top of that for my fellow panelists, which is like, what is success in LTOs, right? From a percent of mix perspective, I'd actually be super curious. Got to meet some of you last night. Just would love to get into your brains on that. So, Killer Burger, 23-unit brand, about to be 24 stores, and my current leadership team kind of came in, and it was founder-led. And so he had built this thing, and he put the original menu together. He had tried other things, but there wasn't this kind of institutional walk of LTOs and how we thought about innovation. It was, what is TJ like and what did he want to do, right? So we were trying to take that, about half and half franchise and corporate, where most of our growth will be franchise, but take that, and so we had to build a framework on how we were going to think about this, how we were going to transition from founder to kind of corporate organization. And we have this very indulgent, fun, kind of playful burger brand. There's bacon on everything. It's very kind of male forward, even though it is pretty split even, 50-50. There's workbenches inside of our restaurants, right? Literally husky workbenches where our condiments are. So we just looked at our burger menu and said, all right, first let's bring our franchisees, get a lot of thoughts and opinion, call smart people like this and get some input, see what's out there with trend, and then just see where there's some holes and try some stuff. So coming out of COVID, like most of us, we weren't doing anything new. And all of a sudden we decided, look, there's a missing link here. There isn't a barbecue-based burger. Tried it. We have a test kitchen, which is in back of one of our restaurants, owned by a franchisee of ours. And we get up there, we just spend a lot of time. We eat food, we try his regulars, and we put the Motley Crue on the menu. We had a cover band that does Motley Crue songs. We launched it in Portland with these micro-influencers. It was a ton of fun. And it was like 10% a mix right out of the gate. And we were like, holy cow. People were writing in, telling us how much they loved it. And we decided, look, I think that's enough to go on the permanent menu. But the way we look at it, yeah, high level would be play around the edges, but keep the core the same kind of 10 burger builds pretty consistently. And we're playing with some sides now as well.
Okay. And it is an interesting question just on mix with what is a successful LTO. Just maybe quickly, love to hear what everybody's thoughts are.
I think you think LTOs is a way to test new menu items, right? If it makes it on the menu. But I think it's also a strategy, especially COVID, crazy commodities, that a strategic launch to cannibalize things that you don't want to sell that are your core items. So if beef is starting to take off, you just really drive a chicken LTO that you're hoping to cannibalize those beef items for a little while so you don't have to worry about price. So success can be strategic cannibalization. Success can be incremental sales, new traffic, fun, buzz, whatever. It's obviously about top line all the time, but sometimes we're trying to protect that middle, and it's so quick to take price where
more managing the margin.
Strategically, gaff something you need to gaff for a minute, and then let it come back when you want to sell it.
Yeah. At the end, I think customer acquisition has to be the ultimate goal, no matter what. If you're revenue or awareness or testing new items, all of them work. But at the end of the day, you have to bring in the new customer acquisition.
Awesome.
Yeah,
great.
There's a ton more where that came from, I'm sure. What I'd like to do now is move along with a little bit more in terms of how we look at LTOs. So when we talk about our next metric for innovation, we're really looking at promotions that focus on uniqueness. So this is going to measure how unique potential purchasers find a particular menu item that we've tested. We have potential. Can we get back to the slides here so everybody can see what I'm seeing? This is important stuff. Anyway, what we want to do is we want to see what it is that's differentiating from the longer and longer growing list of LTOs that we see. Here's that top 10 list for the uniqueness metric specifically. And let's take a look at some clear themes that emerge from this, one in particular, and that's beverages with a twist. So I can think of a couple of operators here that really have a fun time with this, and we've already heard a little bit about some of that, which is totally awesome. So some more standard options like a Bloody Mary or a Mule, but just a unique new element that and it's an example of taking that familiar item and playing with it. Matt, you mentioned something along those lines as well, which is just incredibly smart. But that knowledge of what your menu is and what it is that's going to make that item exciting is kind of what we're talking about, especially with some hesitance to try to be adding new SKUs, new product lines, whatever it might be. But highly rated unique menu items can also, drive traffic in another way. They're buzzworthy. They might stick out, and they might not necessarily be the item that a consumer comes in and says, I got to have that. But it could be that not so subtle reminder that you love that brand, that you want to visit, because you know what? Yeah, this LTO for this Grimace shake at McDonald's might not ever be anything I want to put in my mouth. But you know what? I freaking love their fries. So it's reminding me that I need to go back and get my monthly fry hookup from McDonald's, as an example, right? But cross-utilization is a great strategy to use here. Doing things like mashing up dishes, putting an ingredient that's already on hand into a new dish, add some of that innovation. I think we saw a terrific example just out there with the Bloody Mary pizza that we saw this morning, Bloody Mary sausage pizza. Just a fabulous way to introduce these things. So the question, however, becomes, Is uniqueness a focus that maybe is more powerful or less powerful than craveability? So, you know, in our survey work, we ask the questions about when people are making these dining decisions, what is important or what is unimportant to them, sort of on a scaled basis, right? And we see that nearly 7 in 10 consumers say that unique items are important when they're deciding on that restaurant they want to visit. But what about craveable items? Items that are craveable. And so this is a question for the panel. Hold up your paddle. Do you think that the percent of consumers that say craveable items is higher, yes, or lower, no, than the percent of consumers that say unique items are that decision driver? Who thinks that craveable items are more of a driver? Who thinks that unique items are more of a driver? Aha, okay. And this obviously could hold true in a different way depending on what your concept is. But what we do see here is actually that 3/4 of consumers say craveable items drive that decision. So craveability, that sort of familiarity, is a slight difference in how those things work. And you know, this suggests that that slight twist is really the way to go, and why those slight twist on a classic tends to perform very well. Whereas something that's completely out of the box may generate a splash on social media, may generate the excitement you want to generate around your brand, but again, the approach is different. It might not necessarily result in you know, instantaneous addition to your mix overall, but in sort of reminders, not so subtle reminders about your brand specifically. So let's talk about craveability and what that can actually do in terms of incremental sales. They do have a very high potential to impact those incremental sales, mostly through impulse buys. And if you think about it, you know, you're willing to go out of your way or spend more time or more money to satisfy that craving that you have, that impulse. It's very strong. It's the #1 trigger of cravings, or the #1 trigger of decisions in terms of consumers overall, which we'll see in a second. But the interesting thing about what triggers cravings themselves is that smell. So when you smell things, either good or bad, you react very quickly to it, right? And that's how we respond as people. And that need to satisfy a craving, as I mentioned, is that #1 need state identified by consumers across more than 160 restaurant brands that we track at Technomic. So other than the sort of standardized, you know, I'm hungry or I'm stressed or whatever it is, I would argue that it is the most deeply rooted in sort of our biology as humans, right? It's that key emotional decision driver for consumers by a long shot. Now, if you notice here, we're comparing 2019 to 2024 year to date, and healthy need states are definitely on the rise. However, notice that they're taking share from other need states, such as convenience. They're not taking share from cravings as a need state. So here are those top 10 items that scored highest for craveability metrics. And we got to remember that the #1 restaurant visit driver is that need to satisfy a craving. So oftentimes, that means that these craveable items are going to be a little bit on the indulgent side. That's just the nature of cravings. So let's pull out a couple of these trends that we see here. Steak, kind of an obvious one. This one is one of those classic indulgent entree options that consumers love. But it's important to remember that the more tried and true options can really still move the needle for what's craveable. Doesn't necessarily have to be so far out of the box if it's familiar and craveable to consumers. Then have cheesy, another one of those very obvious cravings. I've heard people say everything's better with cheese, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. But we're seeing it in a lot of different forms here. Various types of cheeses popping up. More descriptive menu language is also showing this. We have creamy whipped feta spread, a 5-cheese cheesesteak that I actually want to try for lunch. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that because I'm not sure that there's a Ruby Tuesday between me and home at this point, but that sounds awesome. Mozzarella, cheddar, American Asiago cheeses topped with cheddar queso on a cheesesteak. For me, you sort of can't go wrong. And then, as I said, this over-the-top indulgent fare really is driving that consumer interest in terms of craveability. Nacho fries with a vegan nacho sauce. Now that one I think is particularly interesting because it starts to hit at the balance that people and consumers generally speaking are more interested in these days, which is the nexus of craveable and healthy. And that might not necessarily be how we think of healthy, but vegan is one of those terms that as health and wellness evolve, has become more recognized as a healthy option. And finally, we have cake with ice cream, chocolate cake. Descriptors that are helping with these craveability ratings are the names. They're right there in the name. You know, best cake ever, ultimate cake. These are things that consumers find craveable and to a degree irresistible. And since these are comforting, indulgent choices, we think that giving those a little bit more space in terms of marketing is a way to encourage consumers to make those impulse purchases, those add-ons, the desserts that we know can actually build check in a very meaningful way for consumers. And so it's time now to bring back the people you all want to hear from, our panel. Let's find out. I'm going to start with you, John, because burgers are a highly craveable item. They're the #1 craveable item in my house. And I would say, generally speaking, every time we sort of list out craveable menu items, burgers are right there at the top with pizza, with chicken and things like that. So you're starting with a platform that has craveability. What are you doing to kind of, up the game a little bit, notch it up, or maybe differentiate in terms of what you have that's craveable?
Well, first of all, just on a personal basis, it was a couple years ago, my wife said, you are not allowed to say craveable in this house anymore, because I guess it was a big thing that I just kept saying. These craveable, it's so craveable. But look.
It's the C word, right?
I would say, yeah, maybe I'll just start with kind of my Killer Burger origin story. There's something about the flavor on exactly how we get our char on these AccuSteam grills, the exact way we cook, bacon on every burger. Our house sauce has this smoky flavor in it. And then we serve a lot of beer, and so it's definitely like a beer-forward fast casual. And we serve beer in a chilled glass, which is not common in a fast casual restaurant. So you have this craveable, I think, pretty unique flavors coming out of each of the burgers we make. There's this consistency across all 10 of the standard builds. But then there's that experience where you've got this burger in one hand that has those elements with this ice-cold glass of beer, at a reasonable price point, at a fast casual price point, in a pretty chilled out environment. We're Portland-based, so you can imagine there's a lot of tats and piercings. The music's loud, and we're not trying to turn it down for people who generally don't like loud music. We say, appreciate you coming. Maybe we're not the right place for you. That's kind of the vibe, right, of our brand and restaurant. But when it comes right down to the flavor, I think, for me, our, hatch chili-based burger, the Jose Mendoza, is amazing. And I wish we still did this. We did it in the early days before I got there. But they literally bought these. They knew the farmer. They got these chilies from southern Colorado. They brought it in, and they literally roasted the chilies in front of the warehouse, the initial office of the restaurant, and brought it out to the restaurants. There's a huge opportunity to start doing that again, I think, in a slightly different way and tell that story to the consumer. But I think if you were to put us up against all these other amazing burger brands that are out there, I think if you blindfolded and you had a bunch of people taste them, the Killer Burger flavors come out really, really consistently. I think that's hard to do, and something that actually pulled me into the brand.
How about the fries? Fries are a big deal.
They're a really big deal, really big deal. And we had to change a little bit the way we did it with our purveyor around, given half the business is digital now, and you worry a lot about that fry sweating in a box, right, just for 30, 40 minutes, in an Uber. And so we put a lot more kind of that flour on the outside that crisps them up a bit. We cook ours a little bit hotter, 375 degrees, versus I think most cooking at around 350. It is a frozen fry. We don't hand cut and do all that stuff, but we never cook. We always cook to order, so that we don't have an area with a heat lamp that they sit, which adds a little stress, to the kitchen, but we think yields an amazing product.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Heath, I want to switch to you because this is kind of the other side of that equation a little bit. And having teenagers in the house, I can tell you the beverages are a highly craveable item. And so, you're playing with it in a different way. What do you got?
Yeah, we did a kind of a unique spin on this one. So smell is what, when you walk into one of our stores, we have 20 flavors brewing at all times. And so I literally said my first experience when I walked in as a consumer, the smell of tea just permeated me. And it literally drew me in, wanting to know what was there. And it allows you to just get very excited about the product. But we took our 5 most popular and we did a line extension and went to lip balm with them. And so we took the nose of the teas, and then we did a better for you play, and we made lip balm out of green tea extract, basically. So we had the sweet Georgia peach and blueberry and watermelon. And so the concept behind it, which is actually proven to work quite well, is that when you whip out your sweet Georgia peach or coconut or whatever, and you're putting it on, you're thinking it could be a good time for a tea.
That becomes a badge of honor among your younger consumers as well. This is now an accessory. That's fabulous. That's fabulous. Matt, I want to come to you, and you got a lot of comfort food on the menu, which we know to be highly craveable as well. As a matter of fact, the number one descriptor among consumers when they think about craveable is comfort food. So, you talked about it a little bit earlier. Anything that you didn't mention earlier that is relevant here?
Yeah, I think craveability should always be tied to an occasion, right? Because I think that's why it's important, because it's your secret weapon into getting to someone's consideration set, to your point earlier, right? So I think when you think about our occasions, we actually have 3 day parts, which is very different from a lot of casual dining brands, because we have breakfast, we have lunch, we have dinner, and we serve breakfast all day, right? So making sure we have craveable items at each day part is really important. And one of the most craveable ones we have at breakfast are our pancakes, right? And I think to a lot of the things you said earlier, the sensory experience for the pancakes is really important. The fact that how we lay them slatted on the plates, the fact that we give you the syrup in warm little bottles as well, and also we allow you to experience your cravings in different ways. So whether you like our blueberry pancakes, which are super indulgent, but also packed with flavor and packed with that smell and kind of experience as well, or we go all the way to your point on the dessert side, where we kind of make a twist on them with our stuffed cheesecake pancakes, right, which is another level of pancake indulgence as well. So not only do you have this awesome platform that is ownable to us because our pancakes have those crispy edges and kind of are done a certain way, we're able to give guests like almost a journey for your own craveability, right? So if you want to kind of just get the base with butter and syrup, it's yours. You want to throw blueberries on there, we have you. And if you want to add another layer of with stuffed cheesecake, we can do that as well. It's about being able to provide that variety and having the right depth within the platform to ensure we can drive guests there.
And like you said, letting the diner choose their craveable journey, letting them follow their crave, so to speak. I think Sam's here to find out whether or not
I heard some folks needed refills, so that's all I'm doing.
We got a lone Bloody Mary out here. Is there somebody who's just cutting against the grain? I mean, that's all right.
Bloody Marys is what I want to know.
Scott, you have talked about a couple of things outside of the adult beverage space, which has its own degree of craveability, but some things on the menu that you guys have going on that are tickling the crave.
Yeah, so I mean, I think craveability obviously is a big deal. I do think differentiating, and just creating a reason that it's just weird or something. So we have an Austin brand, everything's weird, and so we led with a great item that was Mexican ramen lasagna, and super weird, super tasty. TikTok people digging it, along with some other comfort stuff. But it was the lead item and got the most buzz. But there were all these other things that people kind of just wanted. So I think there is something to be said for that's different, that's weird. I like that. I'll try it, and by the way, here's all this other cool stuff, right?
Yeah, things that you'll think about afterward too. Julie, what about you? You have a platform that I would suggest many think of healthy, maybe a little bit before they think of craveable, but I know that there's craveability there. What are you doing to kind of draw attention to that?
Well, we've kind of manufactured some craveability as well, because we have a signature pasta dish that we only serve on the weekends. So we used to call it Friday pasta because we had daily specials, and this was the Friday pasta. So if you've been a long time Tzatziki's customer, you might order it as Friday pasta. But today we have it on the menu as signature pasta. So people will wait all week, and they're like, oh, it's finally Friday. We get to have signature pasta now. So that is something that we have, is a staple of the restaurant.
You're making them wait a week to satisfy their craving? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, wait all the way
They'll
till
do it
Friday.
though. They will do it. Amy, finally, with your menu changing so frequently and looking so different across the system, is there a consistent craveability message or anything that you're working on?
I think we leave it up to the chefs for their creativity and knowing their restaurant and that location and what those guests want. But it goes back to what Matt was saying. We create an experience. So when you come in, we load you up with cocktails, wine. We have a 400-bottle wine list. And you come in, and you're just getting yummy food, right? And we have croquetas and all these things that are craveable that people know that we have as a core staple on most menus. But they also love coming and seeing what the chef's making. And we have a location in Connecticut where the chef has his own, garden, and it's all fresh. And so it's just tapas, so you can try different things. And you know, we do tastings every day to make sure the food is ready to go and the cooks are executing what the chef's, you know, expectation is. But we also make sure that the staff tastes it, right? So that when they go to the table, they're like, oh my gosh, today we have, you know, croquettes on, like, you got to try them today. That we're going to have them, you know, just for the day. So, or we just got this fresh item in. So it's all about bringing the team in. I mean, we're a party place. You come in for a good time. When you leave, I mean, Adam was talking yesterday on a panel, when you leave, we want you ending your day in the best way. You know, you may come in a little grouchy or something may have, we're there to turn it around. We're there to make sure you're part of the community.
Sending them off to bed with a smile.
Setting them off to bed with a smile
That's
and
brilliant.
a full belly.
And I wouldn't sell short this idea that craveable can be the experience. I've had a lot of you know, experiences with that myself, but also conversations with various operators. Moving right along, Dave, what do you have for us next?
Well, Robert, what I have is a little bit more information about innovation. Thanks for asking. Thanks for setting me up. Let's dig a little bit more into flavor innovation. We've talked a lot about craveability. We've talked a lot about the menu trends and how restaurants are using flavor to create memorable experiences for their guests. But just to level set and to give some data, we surveyed operators across segments, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about data, but obviously we want to get our panel. But importantly, and we shared some data on LTOs and how it's grown and how different menu items are growing. But we wanted to get an idea of sort of how many operators or you know, just what the sort of overall sense is on innovation. And so we wanted to define innovation as either adding a new menu item or a limited time offer. And so when we ran the survey earlier this year, a huge portion of operators did change their food and beverages offered on their menu, 85% in the last year. So operators are changing the menu, and the trick is really for consumers and for operators is to figure out how to bring that to life. And again, that's what we're talking about here. But even going forward, I think as we look ahead, and we've got some great information on our menu tool, and we're able to use some artificial intelligence and machine learning to do some predictions on some of the fastest growing flavors and items. And so this shows in terms of operator penetration over the coming 2 years, so essentially by 2026, what are going to be the top 50 fastest growing flavors. And this is an eye chart. We're not going to cover everything on this, the piece, but I do want to pull out a couple of things and highlight some of what we see growing and maybe a little bit more of some of the mainstream type things that are going to be interesting. And so if we talk about the top 20 fastest growing flavors, if we narrow that whole list down to the top 20, it allows us really to see some clear themes among the top trending predictions. We've got beverages, we've got regionality. I don't know if these highlight. No, they don't highlight. They don't. But beverages, regionality. We're going to talk a little bit more about these. But I do want to just ask a quick then poll for the panel, because as we get into flavor and flavor innovation and sort of how this is playing out on menus, some of what we're seeing in terms of different combinations, right, and how these things work together. So I'm just going to ask the panel, and you can choose A, B, or C, can only pick one, which flavor combination is most appealing to consumers? And your answers are either A, sweet and salty, B, sweet and savory, C, spicy and smoky, or D, sweet and spicy. And so how many of you think it's A, sweet and salty? How many of you think that's the most popular or appealing combination? Nobody. Okay. Could you leave just there we go, thanks. Sweet and savory. How many of you think it's sweet and savory? We got 2, okay. How many think it's spicy and smoky? Nobody. Okay, so I'm going to assume that the rest of you are D. How many of you think it's D? Okay. And the answer actually is sweet and savory is the #1 most appealing. This appeals to consumers looking for more flavor combinations. Some 41% of consumers and agree. And so just to give you some sense on where all of those fall, and we not only probed those 4, but a whole different mix of flavor combinations. Sweet and savory was 53, along with savory and smoky, by the way. Savory and spicy, sweet and tangy, sweet and salty. There's a lot of different combinations that are there. They're all in a fairly narrow range, so I don't know that you can necessarily go wrong with any of those, ranging from 42 to 53%. But we're going to get into a little bit more on some of the tanginess here, right? And I heard a little bit of reference to chilies earlier, and so one of the trends that I highlighted on there and one of the things that we're seeing is complex chilies. And so when you think of a chili pepper, most people might think straight spice, right? And especially being here in Nashville, just the spiciness of maybe some of the chili flavors. But there's a lot of chilies out there that are more complex in their flavor profiles. They may combine a little bit of heat with other flavor elements. You've got fruity flavors that combine with spice, for example. In Fresnos, Morritos, ají amarillos. And so you see some of those that are popping on the menu there. We've got smoke in Morritos and Fresnos as well, along with smoke from the blistered preparation element of Toreados, which are expected to increase about 120% in operator penetration over the next two years or so. So complex chilies is definitely a trend. And if you think it's easy to pronounce all of these words on the screen, it's not. You get a little tongue-tied on these. And as we look ahead to the next 3 years out for complex chilies, we've got 3 trends we're watching. Right? One is a sort of an application trend. We've been seeing a lot of these more mainstream chili peppers like jalapenos, habaneros, which tend to be more spice-driven. And those tend to be more, at least on the menu, spotlighted in cocktails and beverages in recent years. And so you see chili-based cocktails there. Chipotle is a more mainstream chili, but one with a smoky heat. And that pairs well with mezcal, tequila, hibiscus, basil in this cocktail that we've highlighted here from Luna Bar in San Francisco. So it's a nice flavor balance with a lighter floral touch and herb. And then we've got 2 flavor-forward trends. We can expect chilies that are more earthy, more fruit-forward to find momentum with cascabels and chili costeños as respective examples that we show in that bucket. So we know fruity heat is already poised to grow. With a lot of those Fresnos, Morritos, and ají amarillos on the rise and on operator penetration. So it's not surprising to us anyway that some fruity flavors and sort of the fruity side of chilies, but we're also seeing some earthy chilies percolating in that independent restaurant base as well. And then I think one of the ways this tends to play out a lot with operators is in sauces and condiments, right? And so this trend of multifaceted chili sauces is so important because consumers find these flavor combinations appealing, but the fact that there are sauces that have these flavors is also important. A lot of consumers view sauces as a traffic driver, including about 42% of the 18 to 34-year-old consumer who actually tell us that they consider which sauces and condiments will be available when they select which restaurant to visit. So it is actually a traffic driver. And so being able to offer something unique and boldly flavored like one of these sauces, we believe, and as we've seen it play out, is key to driving traffic, especially among Gen Z and millennial consumers. And then finally, just on the topic of complex chili, we're also seeing it play out as we've talked about with some of these sauces, right? The multifaceted chili sauce. So this sort of takes that complex chili trend, which is more of an ingredient, and puts it into the sauce, puts it into the condiment, puts it into the dressing space. And this is a space we know is becoming, as I mentioned, increasingly important as operators turn to these type of items to differentiate themselves and differentiate some of their more popular offerings. And so we see it play out on burgers, and we see it play out on pizzas and sandwiches and appetizers. Chili dressing is actually our #1 fastest growing prediction, expected to increase over 300% in operator penetration over the next couple of years. And so you see just a number of global sauces from Serbian ajvar, which is a roasted pepper sauce, to Korean gochujang, a different Asian-influenced chili, ginger and chili dip. You can read all of those. They're very hard to say, and so I'll just leave it at that, that there is a lot of different chili sauces that we're seeing play out on the menu. And again, just to watch, 3 years going forward, we talked about a lot of different flavor pairings. Again, you can just see how some of these umami infusions and variations on different sauces and global renditions for these. Suffice to say that there's a lot of different things happening on the menu with sauces and with chili flavors and flavor pairings that are happening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert.
So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide because there's a lot going on. As Dave said, some of these are eye charts, and hopefully you'll take them home, share them, and kind of enjoy them internally after the fact. But what I wanted to call out here is we have a couple of statements, agree, disagree statements with consumers. I enjoy trying different foods, is that top set of bars. As I've gotten older, I'm more willing to try new foods and flavors. That's your middle set. But at the bottom is I prefer to visit restaurants that offer dishes with new innovative flavors and ingredients. And you'll notice those bars are a lot smaller. So I think that's interesting. It kind of says to us that sometimes this trial is actually taking place outside of the four walls of the restaurant or outside of that delivery experience where there maybe is a little more hesitancy based on the investment or the occasion. Occasions come up a lot. I'm a strong believer that occasion dictates so much about what goes on with consumers. But the other thing I want to note here is that you'll see that interest in trying new foods is very strong with younger consumers. But as we move into I want to try new foods or visit restaurants that are doing this, people start to age into that. And it's important to note that it's highest with millennials because those are the consumers that right now really represent that peak frequency consumer. So 32 to 35, that's when peak frequency takes place in terms of overall number of restaurant occasions. So it is going to be relevant going forward, as Gen Z ages into that peak frequency age group as well. But that's really what I wanted to call out is that, for younger consumers, that interest might be taking place outside of the restaurant. But for your more mature diners, that's where the interest is coming in. So again, another way to think about it. But to that end, I see some things here specifically with our fun and funky theme that really appeal to some of those younger consumers. And it's because it's not necessarily unfamiliar, it's just maybe unfamiliar territory where I'm seeing these things. I love the example here, the Shake Shack strawberry frosted donut with rainbow sprinkles. Rainbow sprinkles make everything more fun. It's a party in a cup right there. Everything's spiced. I just had a conversation with Mr. Chris Keating earlier today, and he was saying, one of his desert island foods would be an everything bagel. So to find this popping up on all sorts of other spots, and now that it's widely available in retail, this is something that I think people are interested in. And birria, particularly interesting here as you start to see it not necessarily as a standalone dish, but using it as a flavoring or as a spice, putting it with eggs as a topping, maybe on a pizza or something like that. So starting to see a lot of more people playing with those. And then when we talk about 3 years out, give or take, what are our fun and funky predictions? Well, we have provocative ingredients. Some of these things that are maybe historically no-nos on the menu. MSG called out as an ingredient in this martini. Colostrum, this one is a bit of a stretch for me. That new mother's first milk as far as an animal is concerned. Insects, bugs, things like this. But that nostalgia that plays huge with not just millennials, but with Gen Z and with very young Gen Z. We think we're going to see more of these menu items that are inspired by things like this Big Mac skewer that we see visualized here. Love that combination. Hot Pockets, I'd love to see this. A big convenience store user when I was younger. Love to see what people do with that Hot Pockets idea on the menu as well. And we have these meal-inspired cocktails. Again, these types of mashups that we know are so exciting to consumers. French toast is the example that's called out right here with maple syrup, brioche, and egg included in that particular cocktail. Pizza-inspired caprese, salad-inspired drinks. Things where we're not just using the beverage to convey those traditional pieces, but again, mashing up not specifically beverage flavors, but food flavors into the glass to have some fun and have a little funkiness. And so, with that, time to come back to our contestants. What do we think? According to consumers, what is the most effective way to impart flavor to a dish? Is it A, seasonings that the diner can add at the table or at home if they are at home? Is it B, seasonings or spices added by the chef in that whole preparation process? Is it C, marinades, or is it D, preparation method? According to consumers, what is most effective in adding flavor to restaurant food? Is it A, seasonings I can add at the table? Who feels that A is the answer? Nobody feels that. B, seasonings or spices added by the chef. We've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 4. We got a strong majority here. C, marinades. And D, preparation method. We've got 2 that say preparation method, which is in fact the correct answer. Grilled, fried. We got some winners up here. Is everybody, we've got an honor system going. Is anybody keeping track of their score? Is Sam? You're winning? Oh, but that's... I love it. I love it. Well, and this is not new. For more than 10 years, we've been tracking this, and preparation style has consistently been that #1 preferred method of communicating flavor to consumers. And so, you know, these styles that you can imagine, grilled, braised, extremely appealing in terms of how you describe what a dish tastes like. We also see a strong preference for some of the other trends that we've talked about here. Multifaceted chili sauces falls in nicely with that 58% of consumers who say that sauces added during preparation is appealing. And many of them could actually be considered condiments. Or marinades or glazes, and we see that more than half of consumers find these things appealing. So it's a really tight race up there up top. But preparation method, as I said, 10 years plus, this has been #1. So, you know, it works. I was thinking actually, John, about what you were mentioning in terms of the process of preparing those burger patties. The more a consumer sees that or knows about it, the more it just imparts that idea of.
Could we touch on this one first? I'm so curious to talk about this because it's interesting. I obviously didn't know the right answer. You got to tell the story though, right? And I think there's so many brands that do such a great job with their food. I could think of all these examples, but man, if you don't do a great job telling the story and getting it out there, then it's like, no one knew that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think as panelists about that.
We're trying to go down the path a little bit on the functional side. So mushrooms, colostrum, L-theanine, things like that, which then naturally tell a story. But you more importantly, you get to pick it if that's what you want. And so if you're looking for an energy boost or something that you think is going to help your gut or inflammation or whatever, it's more that functional side. And we see that kind of peaking. Although we haven't quite executed it yet, but that's kind of our next one. Hot honey, I saw that was one of the ones that peaks. We've identified a company, I won't say who yet, we're still trying to close a deal, but we want to do a collaboration with a hot honey because we think that one just covers a myriad of products. You could put it on multiple things versus just kind of picking an item and going deep with it. So yeah, I mean, spot on all of these.
I think somehow we've got to get your staff involved, and so one of our brands, we don't have salt and pepper shakers on the table intentionally because the food is well seasoned. And most people immediately put salt on something because maybe they eat at bland restaurants. And so it's a story. Do you have salt and pepper? We do, but you need to take a bite first. It's well seasoned. And so it's something about the fact, and of course I voted wrong. I said season in the kitchen. But I think it's an important deal that I think the customer's first bite should tell them everything. They shouldn't have to figure it out. But it's a neat way to say our food's really good. That's why. If you want salt and pepper, we'll bring it. But
I love that. You're letting the customer know you're not always right. You know what I mean? We got a thing going on here. We know.
Forces a conversation.
Yeah.
And we describe in all of our marketing materials, like we make all of our dressings fresh daily. So in our materials, it says made fresh daily, scratch made, and use those descriptive words. If it's char grilled for a lot of our proteins, then we say that on our menu and in our marketing materials as well. So we try to incorporate those processes into what the customer visually sees as a descriptor of what the item is.
One small build, I think there's a high correlation between flavor and taste. And I think what happens is also there's a high correlation between taste and the perception of taste and the actual taste, right? And I think what these call-outs help you do is to drive that perception, right? So when you say you have hand-breaded chicken tenders like we have, or we have slowly braised cotton pot roast for our pot roast, well, it drives that quality cue along with the flavor piece. I think for a guest perspective, flavor and taste are like interchangeable, right? So when you have the ability to call out how you prepare it, so like, okay, I, one, know what I'm eating. Two, I want to eat that. And now three, like, how do I engage with that with your brand specifically as well? So I think those call-outs on the menu are super important as well.
Absolutely. Amy, anything to add to that, or are you?
I think just agree with everybody, but adding that you have to create a culture of training on your team that gets excited about that information that they can bring to the guests so they have that great experience. Because, our chefs just went to Spain and they planted the olive oil trees. The olive oil is on our table. And it's all these little things that actually connect you to the guests. Because some companies do some amazing things, and I hear about it and I'll say, nobody knows. Like, how are you marketing that? And you've got a gap in your system. So, it's whether it's on an app or you're communicating it through photos or whatever you're doing. But I do think a lot of brands could tell that message a little bit differently now. I mean, social media plays a big part, so.
That's true, and you're sort of grassroots style. If you think about it, a lot is happening inside your restaurant specifically based on what you're doing. That gives a great opportunity because the passion that your staff has is never going to fail to resonate with your guests. You know, so that's an important piece.
Also, like if you have sauces that came up earlier, I mean, if you got a choice of 4, just give the guest all 4. Give them a sauce flight, because the server may not describe it right, and don't charge them 50 cents for an extra. It's kind of shitty, right? Yeah. Just give them a sauce flight, and they never know. They might mix and match, but it's kind of just a way to showcase your variety. Instead of making them pick, they might pick wrong, or you told me wrong, and now it's too hot, and I'm embarrassed to say it's too hot. Nashville hot chicken, same thing. It's medium, no, it's friggin' hot. It's hot, no, it's really, really hot. Depends which Nashville chicken place you go to. Just give them everything.
We do that with new guests, and we call it the tour of flavors, because we have about, I don't even know how many are on it, 10 or 12 different sauces and dip combinations. So we do that when we can identify a new guest so that they can try everything that we have.
Oh, I love that, and it puts the diner in the driver's seat to a degree as well. You never know that somebody could come up with an accidental brilliant combination. Then you'd have like a new signature item, signature to this guest, right, that you get to promote. So we are seeing a lot of these behind-the-scenes preparations on menus that are popping up, and we think that in the next 3 years we're going to see a little bit more of that, but it might also kind of lean a little further into the actual ingredient varietals, such as a cucchillo olive or a gremolata with a baguette here, as we've seen in some of these examples right here. And the preparation call-outs, we think, are going to lean a little further into things like time spent doing this. For example, if you're talking about a 12-hour cold beet, as this example, the winter panzanella salad, calls out, the amount of time that it takes to do that is going to signal to your guests not only that this is going to be unique and something interesting, but the dedication to doing this idea of slow cooking, or of really, I think one of the gentlemen on one of the panels yesterday talked about this too, how it takes 12 hours to cook a hog when you're talking about doing it the right way at his barbecue. And that's, I mean, those are the kinds of things that consumers appreciate because they're not doing that themselves, ever, at home. But if they can experience it, it makes a huge difference to them. So we've already kind of actually covered this to a degree, but did anybody have any other points to add in terms of preparation method call-outs or things that you're doing? I mean, I think we covered this pretty okay. Everybody took the initiative to do so, which means that I'm going to hand it over to you, Dave.
Okay. How are we doing on drinks, by the way?
I'm low. Sam's not doing his job. Get it together, Sam.
All right, well, while Sam's doing that, we do have another question for the panel, and we're shifting now to a discussion about global-inspired foods and global flavors.
Thank you.
So what % of consumers would like restaurants to offer more global-inspired foods and beverages? Is it 20, 29, 46, or 53? I'll wait till Sam has...
Sorry, don't let me be a distraction. Just want a liquor.
Here we go. No. I brought you a real one.
You're quite welcome.
He started shaking from last night.
All right, so global flavors. What % of consumers want to see more global-inspired foods and beverages? 20, 29, 46, or 53? How many think it's A? B? C? D?
Wait, Julie, what should we do?
I said C.
See? Julie, I'm with Julie, whatever she says now.
Well, the answer is actually 29.
Julie, the one time I go with you.
I led you astray. I'm sorry.
But I think when you look at who they are, right, I mean, it is skewed a little bit by these baby boomers, which are much lower, and even Gen X, my generation, which is only 24%. So it does skew much younger. And as we look ahead to what these younger consumers are looking for, they are going to be looking more for these global food and beverage type items. And so what are some of the things that we're looking at here? So we asked the % of consumers who find different types of cuisines appealing. Again, we're not going to run through all of these, but you can see just about any type of different part of the world represented here. Just really want to focus maybe on those top 10. The top 10 appealing global flavors, and these are already deeply ingrained, right? And so Italian, Chinese, Mexican have been the top cuisines or flavor types forever. We've got Japanese, we've got Spanish, Thai, Greek, Korean, French, and now Mediterranean coming up there. So these are all really finding new life with consumers, and so a lot of Mediterranean cuisines are finding flavor as well, with more than 4 in 10 consumers. And this could be Spanish, Greek, French, more generic Mediterranean cuisines. You've got Caribbean, which is a little bit lower. Puerto Rican, Cuban cuisines are appealing to about 1/3 of consumers. And so there's a whole list there of things. And I think as we look ahead to what's going to happen over the next 3 years in terms of some of the global, we want to take a different approach and just look at what's kind of trending here more broadly in terms of some of the global cuisines, right? And so you've got these reimagined global classics. And so you've got an al pastor cuisine, which is now taking, which is typically more of a traditional pork type thing, and you've got more of a Spanish octopus that's being reimagined as part of that. You've got some deconstruction happening in terms of different types of, roasted chicken breast, makni sauce, and sautéed greens at some of these. And again, a lot of these are independent restaurants. And then some call-outs of some up-and-coming regions that we're starting to see pop more on menus, Caribbean, West African, a couple of examples there of West African spices, Haitian hot wings, that type of thing. And so these are some of the types of things and the way restaurants are starting to incorporate global cuisines in. But it's not always just about global, is it? It's also about bringing what you do best locally into your menu as well. And so we talked, and if you think back to that big list I put up earlier, there's a lot of local flair, a lot of local flavors that are finding momentum, and whether it's style call-outs from different states or cities like Kansas City style or Alabama style, preparation methods, which are typically relegated to barbecue, or you've got Detroit style, which is typically referring to pizza. We have Hawaiian dressing that's expected to grow 125% up there in operator penetration. So again, these, similar to the call-outs that I talked about a little bit earlier, these local styles or influences speak to this trend of transparency, and that consumers want to have more detail into the background of influences with certain ingredients. And certainly, consumers agree. 41% agree that it's important that restaurants offer local flavors based on their location. And so really incorporating a lot of those local call-outs can come into play to appeal to these types of consumers. And then just in terms of what we're watching 3 years out in terms of some local, you see some different things from collard greens, from burnt ends, cauliflower burnt ends down in Austin, Texas, oxtail cheesecake in North Carolina. We're seeing a lot more farm and producer call-outs. Seedling Farms black raspberries, for example. So again, a lot of local flair and a lot of ways to make that menu much more attuned to that local consumer, I think is really important. So I guess, both from a global and from a local perspective, I'd just like to open it up to the panel and talk about how you might be playing with local flavors and ingredients. How is that playing out on your menu? And I'll just kind of open it up. I know because we're running a little bit short on time, so I'll just, anyone that has something that wants, we don't necessarily need to go through everybody, but is there anyone that has something interesting in terms of local flavors and ingredients? Amy, you look like...
Interesting all day, every day. I mean, the chefs come up with some cool things. So.
Yeah, so because you're doing a different menu every day, you're incorporating that local into...
ingredients like chef, one of our brands is doing a candied or caramelized plantain banana split instead of regular bananas, but just different with a local ice cream company. So we kind of love on this
What did
Amy's.
You name that one? I'm curious.
Girl, I can't share all my secrets. It's
I'm
a
gonna
banana
pop
split.
over
It's kind
there.
of a fusion, but it's plantain is cool, and then it's local ice cream.
Yeah, that's
Kinda
great.
It's a nice tie.
That's great. Good.
We did a twist on pumpkin spice was mentioned earlier, and is probably one of the greatest LTOs. Everybody knows Starbucks did it the best. Being 85% of our stores are in Texas, so this year we said no more pecan or no more pumpkin, and it's all about Texas pecan.
Oh, okay.
So we went pretty heavy on that. So it's kind of a poking the bear a little bit,
Yeah.
but back to the roots of a good Texas pecan flavor. And so far it's paid off really well.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
That sounds
I
great.
think you're going to see us because of how our brand's positioned, you'll see us probably focus more on hyper-regional than more so global, just because of how the kind of structure is. And one example is this past summer we did our beef sting sauce, which is kind of a play on like a natural hot as well, but we did it in a way that's more relevant to our guests, because I think what's interesting about hyper-regional flavors is that you have to understand where you are on the adoption curve for guests, right? Because if your guests are not one that are going to be accepting products that are like in early stage, how do you make it real relevant to them? So that's why we call it the beef sting. We did a few things there as well, because it allowed it to be still play in the hyper-regional space, but in a much more relevant way to our guests. But that's going to vary from brand to brand and restaurant to restaurant. So it's a really important factor. You should also factor in like where are you in the life cycle for your guests from adoption perspective.
Awesome. Great. Robert?
So let's talk a little bit about health and wellness. Again, we're going to kind of move through a few more sections and get as far as we get, right, Dave? I mean, this is where we're going to go with this. You know, there is consumer interest in health, and so we want to see what that looks like over time. So we're talking about what the trend is here, and are consumers really focused on healthy eating? So the question here is, you know, or it's an agree-disagree statement. I am very health conscious. You can see it spiked there during the pandemic. But where are we today? Well, we're really only just kind of getting back to that point where we saw during the pandemic at its height. And this really is driven by younger consumers, you know, who are more health obsessed. And it's a little bit easier to be that way these days with the advent of social media, making it very easy to find the influencer that appeals to you in terms of what you're thinking about health is. But the real question when we talk about healthy attitudes is, you know, what does that mean for us as restaurant operators? What about that percentage of consumers who do not, in fact, look for healthy options when they're at restaurants? Are we seeing the same sort of trend line here? You know, is it higher or is it lower? And that's actually a question for our contestants. Who believes that the percentage of consumers who do not look for these healthy options at restaurants is growing? Who believes that the percentage of consumers who do not look for healthy options is shrinking? Okay, growing, let's see the yeses. Anybody? Nobody thinks it's growing? This is, again, it's sort of a negative statement. Consumers who, when they are at restaurants, are not looking for the healthy option. Do you believe that that number is growing, or do you believe that that number is shrinking? Right? So if I go to restaurants and I say, I'm a healthy guy, but when I'm at a restaurant, I'm not ordering the healthy item. Are there more of those people today than there were 5 years ago? Or are there fewer of those people today than there were 5 years ago? Do we have an answer? Does anybody have an answer? A little bit of a confusing question. I apologize for that. So let's just take a look at here.
I think it's a trick question.
It's very trick
more.
It is more people, right?
And then you give us trick questions.
Absolutely, yeah. Because once you set foot in the restaurant and you get that sense of what is available in the restaurant, you actually see fewer and fewer people saying, or more and more people saying, no, I'm not looking for that healthy option when I get into the restaurant. Yeah, it is that sort of backwards phrased question, but intentionally against those others and highlight it so people can say, this is how I think about myself, but this is how I actually behave when I set foot in the restaurant.
And that data wrench into it, that might be lowering a little bit or like flattening out, but the allergies, the gluten-free, so like all of those are increasing.
Yeah.
So you have to have all those options on the menu.
You do, and obviously that number of people
intentionally,
is higher still.
Yeah.
So, but we do have an increasing number of consumers that are saying, you know, at restaurants, it's a little different for me. I let my guard down. We all have examples of this of people we know in our lives. My mom, I think, is the best example I've ever seen. She was on the vanguard of health for so many years, buying yogurt before you could buy it at commercial grocery stores, you know, going to the health food store when I was growing up. I had the worst lunches growing up at school. It was terrible. But when she goes to the restaurant, she wants everybody to order a dessert so she can taste all of them. She wants the second drink, you know, or third, whatever it might be. She indulges when she goes out to the restaurant. So she's looking for very different things from restaurants and food service than she does when she's at home and in her kitchen, where she's very strict about what she does. Again, going back to that idea that it's based on the occasion, that's going to be very important.
Actually, if I could throw something in real quick.
Yeah.
It reminded me, I don't know if you guys remember when we had to start posting calorie counts and everything, right, on menus. And I remember we were at the brand I was with at the time was just going into New York. So this was very new for us. We were already nervous about that launch, right? So a lot at stake. And we were putting up the new menu panels and had all that, and we thought, oh man, it's going to totally change product mix and everything. Nope, exact same basic P-mix. And it taught us a lot about, I think you think about this stuff at home, when you go out, generally you're looking for
A splurge.
Yeah, that's right.
You are.
So here's a curveball for you.
Yes.
The Ozempic impact. So how many soccer moms and soccer dads are shooting about the Ozempic every day to lose weight? So they're just skipping a meal. It's true, right? And so hungry, not hungry, smaller portion. How do you go after those folks? Because they're skipping a meal. And I forget the statistic of how many hundreds of millions, not maybe hundreds, maybe millions of people that have found this crazy injectable weight loss thing, and we all know them, right? How'd you lose 100 pounds? It was not intermittent fasting in 3 months. What'd you do?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But I think that it also comes down to, when we look at the total population as a whole, that sort of total addressable market, what's the percentage that are doing that compared to what the more general population might be doing? Those things are always going to be there, and they may chip away at small pockets or small segments of your guest base, for example. But by and large, consumers are looking for these things. But this idea that the small meals and whatnot, Amy, I think of what you're offering and how that allows the consumer who is sort of putting those constraints on themselves to still maximize the occasion from a flavor and from an overall experiential standpoint without having to have, the big steak or whatever it might be.
I think it still ties back to optionality. You have to have multiples, and in all of our businesses, very few times do you come in solo. And so if one person is looking for something and another, they're going to pick that restaurant based off of who has the best options, to kind of meet their needs. So.
And that, again, leans further into this idea of customization or personalization or individualization that consumers are looking for. And it's not always just to fit what I'm in the mood for, but to fit my diet as well, or what I perceive to be my diet. But because it's my diet, I get to change it when I want, right? Which allows me for that indulgence. One thing we are seeing, though, however, is the idea that new and unique flavors that also carry health benefits are appealing to consumers, and nearly half of younger consumers find that they're more likely to try a new unique flavor if we can attach one of those health benefits to it, which I think is fabulous and gives a lot of opportunity. And here we are back to beverages, because that is a space where so much innovation and so much energy is happening right now with the explosive growth of those beverage concepts, which Heath, I'm sure you know a thing or two about, right? But we're tracking it across all different beverage types. It's really fabulous to see. But we also see some other interesting things that maybe are not as obviously health forward when we think about them. It's important because, again, that definition of what is healthy is changing and it's evolving. But you look at blended meat as an example here, that sort of #1 fastest growing. Well, all we're doing is we're talking about reducing the actual amount of meat and adding in a plant-based protein additive, such as mushrooms or something, to really give that alternative to a more meat-heavy option and give it a little bit of lightness and, again, potential health benefit as well. Cold foam, much less caloric than, say, whipped cream. Schmaltz is interesting because, on the outside you might say, okay, well, rendered chicken fat, how can that necessarily be healthy? But apparently it's chock full of collagen, which a lot of people are very invested in these days. Nails, hair, skin, other things that we all love to obsess about, right? Alkaline. It sounds very scientific in nature, but obviously, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, several health benefits associated with that. So a lot going on in terms of stealth health with consumers. Now, going forward, our prediction is that we're going to see a little bit more of a straightforward approach for stealth health. Vegetables more toward the center of the plate as the star of the show, and some new vegetables that we might expect. Caraflex cabbage, new mushrooms appearing on the menu, but again, as that center of the plate component. Maybe it's avocados used as a meat substitute, for example. We have newer functional plants that also are coming into menus. Angelica, burdock, osha root, and these are things that are used as traditional medicines in other cultures throughout the world. So a lot of opportunity to kind of sneak into healthy through the back door, and that back door is flavor, right?
Yeah. So we've just got a couple minutes left, and we've still got a lot of trends to talk about. So I'm going to do a little audible and turn to the panel. We've got things about plant-based, we've got low, no alcohol, we've got some value discussion we can still talk about. What's the last topic that you guys want to talk about?
Value.
I'm fine value.
Value.
Value?
Yeah.
I'm in the no alcohol, low alcohol. Try January, it just kills the wine business,
Well, we'll just talk about that real briefly then, and then we'll go to value. And so, and Amy, maybe, without putting a lot of the data up, because certainly the data from a stealth health perspective, a lot of what we're seeing here in terms of low, no alcohol is is trending, and we're seeing sober curious movement happening, and we're seeing a lot of the dry Januaries and things like that, and certainly there's kind of a health benefit that goes along with it. But maybe just talk a little bit about what you're seeing from a low no alcohol, and is there some way that Barcelona is addressing that, or are you taking that into consideration as you build your beverage program?
I think we're trying to think of something innovative at the same time, just creating a really good mocktail menu. You know, when we had an event the other night and we got a lot of compliments on our mocktails, and we have a really good beverage team that put those together, and I think focusing on that, maybe adding more in January, and maybe having a special bar in the back that only does mocktails, making it an experience for those folks that don't drink or are doing dry January. So we're coming up with something.
Yeah. What's your mix right now? If you look at your beverage program and taking, soft drinks, which you probably don't sell a lot of anyway, but what's your mix now of non-alcohol versus alcohol? Is it?
Oh, it's very little. I mean, we don't sell
still tiny.
I mean, we're Barcelona wine bar, so.
Yeah. So people aren't, but it is something that you're focused on.
But their partner or someone else may not drink at the table, so we want to have that option. But yeah, we're lots of wine and.
There's a whole craft focus on NA Bev, right? So mocktails means fake, but like no buzz, something where you don't look like it's a little no cocktail drink. You can hang out so you don't stand out.
Well, what's been funny is we created this mocktail tea time, and it's been selling, but everyone's adding alcohol to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're like, hey, I need to add buttons for vodka shots and tequila. I'm like, okay, well, I get them added. So it's just kind of funny to watch the consumer behaviors right now.
Yeah.
They'll take the tea. We can make tea mocktails. It'll become cocktails, so yeah.
Mushrooms are the one that I see the most.
Mushrooms.
Yeah, the mushroom-infused beverage.
Skip ahead to this.
Mushroom-infused beverages.
Yeah.
We all need to go drinking after this as part of the experiment.
Market tour.
Yeah, market tour.
Well, let's just
Go back to value. They all wanted value.
We've got about 6 minutes left. So, and Robert, I know you've been on a soapbox about value. So, do you want to just?
No, I can step down from my soapbox, and we can tag team this one, right? The real question here for everybody, and this is just kind of a simple yes/no question, not as complex as the last one, I promise you. But if we talk about how the evolution of value lives in the mind of consumer, is value, generally speaking, when we think about the ability to provide value through high-quality menu items or prices relative to some similar types of restaurants, are more consumers prioritizing value today than they were 2 years ago? That's the question for you. So, who believes that consumers are prioritizing value to a higher degree today?
And this is in where they select to go.
Yeah, it's in that restaurant selection process. And nobody believes that they actually are not deprioritizing value, but in fact prioritizing value equal amounts or less. And the answer actually is that there's no increase in the importance of value to consumers when they're making a decision, right? And I think this gets back to this idea that it isn't necessarily about the value that you present in some sort of new way. It really is more tied to this idea that I, as a consumer, now, with inflation creeping into every single corner of my spreadsheet and my life these days, am having to pull back on that total number of restaurant visits that I can make or restaurant orders that I can make in a week, in a month, whatever it might be. So what does that mean? That means that when I do choose a restaurant, I go where I want, I spend as much as I want because I've been saving it up. I used to go twice a week, out to the casual dining spot. I can't anymore. I can only go once a week. But when I do go, I'm going where I want. I'm shooting the works. We're going to order the drinks. We're going to order the desserts and everything. And we think that's what's going on here. It's that sort of impact purchasing that consumers are making when they're faced with the unfortunate decision to sort of reduce their number of overall occasions.
But isn't value what? Product plus experience divided by price?
100%.
So I forgot the experience part.
100%.
So I think you have to drive value is not just price.
Right.
I think it's the experience side. So I think you have to create an engaged teammate that wants to be there and make them want to be there and create fun so they have an experience for the guests. So I think if you're all about, is that next slide? My bad. Okay. But if it's like the other deal, if you're just leading on price, I mean, that's a slip.
And I think that's borne out here, right? What's the number one value through high quality items, right? And so, I mean, and those are the, whether it's you're a limited service or a full service restaurant, the value that you're showing is through your menu, through the quality, and it's not necessarily low prices, although that's up there as well. But it's really, I think to your point, the experience and everything that goes into it. And price plays a role and an important role, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah, I think that's why value is also, to your point, it's a perception how you perceive it, but it's a part of your core brand values as well. So for one of our big values is generosity, right? So our portions are going to be larger in size, and we're going to give it to you at a fair price, right? And that's how guests kind of see our value. But it's important to understand that your guests are cross-shopping with other brands. So the frequency is the question for you is like, where does the frequency change, right? Because they may still be going to that coffee shop 5 or 6, 7 times a week, but to do that, they're going to go to you less. So it's like, who do I interchange with the most, and where can I protect myself against that? Is kind of the question we should all ask ourselves as it comes towards value as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. We thought about it at Killer Burger around day part as well. So our dinners, Thursday, Friday, Saturday are great. We didn't want to mess with that. We didn't want to mess with our hero product, right? Which is it's a large burger. It's larger than normal, right? It's over 5 ounces. But we have a pint size, and so we said we really need to drive lunch transaction comps, right? And so we, for the first time ever, we did this box lunch deal. We felt a little bit nervous about, to your point about being kind of generous with portions. We called it the box lunch, and it's a very like blue collar brand in that way. Like we just said, with box lunch, a little bit less fries. It's the pint burger and a drink for $10, but from open, so we open at 10:30 to 4. And it's probably been the most successful. And we didn't mess with the hero, right? We're like, we still put it up on a pedestal. You want to come in and have that experience. But it's been something that we see it, and we see, trans comps during lunch being driven. Our teams are happy because they're a little bit busier. Their tips are up as a result during that week or day part. And our franchisees are stoked. We didn't mess with the hero product and start discounting that down, which is a dangerous game.
I like that.
So we've got just a little bit of time left. We have a lightning round, so if you could each pick up your yes, no. We just want to get your sense. We've got 10 questions that we just want to get your opinion on. You want to read them off, Robert? Go ahead.
Sure. We'll start with number 1. Okay, who is optimistic about 2025? Yes, I'm optimistic.
Gotta be optimistic.
Yes.
Look at that. All right. There we go.
Love the optimism. All right.
That's a great way to finish the conference.
It is. All right. A little bit more nuanced. Who is projecting traffic growth in 2025?
Small.
Yeah, you know what? Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I think
If we
this
don't,
is
we're all in trouble.
That's right.
That's what Adam told me last night.
Well,
Yeah, we
you
won't.
know.
There will be no conference next year.
Okay, who anticipates that inflation will in fact cool off in 2025?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, oh, there's a hesitant yes. There's a very hesitant yes, but so far so
You're
good.
kind of yes, I think. Is that?
Yeah, there's a maybe.
Okay.
Is that a
Just a
maybe?
quick judging.
No, I am.
How about labor costs? Who expects labor costs to increase in the coming year?
Depends on state.
We have to admit it.
Labor costs to increase.
Increased labor costs. So we've got on the fence. I love it. I love it.
I didn't really
so, is there something to that on the fence? I mean, is it because of the system and your locations, or is there some other aspect?
I think there's so many elements that go into by the state you're in, the day parts you serve, everything else as well, and how your labor kind of is executed. So I think it really depends on your concept.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
Good one. Okay, who believes, speaking of labor, that it is getting harder to find qualified candidates? Getting harder to find qualified candidates. Mixed bag.
Mixed bag there, yeah.
Mixed
okay.
bag. I love it. All right.
Says no. Okay.
Who is opening new units in 2025?
A lot of optimism there. That's great.
Yes, I love it. Who is currently viewing menu innovation, all this stuff we've been talking about, right? Who's viewing menu innovation as a growth driver? We got somebody abstaining. All right, there you go. It's okay. How about who is expanding their menu categories in 2025? No, sticking with the basics, sticking with the winners. All right. And who can tell us that this panel is the best thing that has happened to me at this conference? That's a bunch of strong yeses. All right.
Great.
Awesome.
We're out of time. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you to our panel.
Thank you so much.